It wasn't the nikah that broke her heart. It wasn't the quiet ceremony, the whispered duas, or the weight of her new title as someone's wife. No. What cracked her spirit was the moment she realized marriage doesn't always come with understanding. That love, even when sealed before Allah, could still feel like a tug of war between heart and honor. She was 4 months into her nikah. No grand wedding yet, no rukhsati with tearful goodbyes, no shared home filled with the hum of a new life. Just a sacred bond, forged in a small room with a handful of witnesses, a few signatures, and the weight of Allah's promise. She still lived in the house where she'd grown up. The same creaky wooden floors, the same faded floral curtains, the same sound of her father's footsteps pacing the hallway at dawn. Her life hadn't changed, not outwardly, but inside everything was different. She was a wife now, and with that came a quiet shift, like the air before a storm. Expectations bloomed. Some that warmed her heart, like his late-night texts asking about her day, or the way he'd shyly compliment her smile. But there was one expectation that didn't bloom. It sank, heavy and cold, into the pit of her stomach. Her husband had started asking to spend the night together. Not after the wedding, when their lives would intertwine under one roof. Not after the rukhsati, when she'd leave her parents' home with blessings and celebration. Now, while she still slept in her childhood bedroom, under the roof where her father prayed Fajr, and her mother hummed nasheeds in the kitchen. At first, his requests were soft, almost playful. "Just come over for a bit, Habibti," he'd say, his voice light through the phone. "No one has to know." She'd laugh it off, steering the conversation elsewhere, hoping he'd sense her unease. But the requests didn't stop. They grew, like a tide creeping higher. The playfulness turned to teasing, then to something sharper. "We're married, aren't we? It's halal. Why are you acting like it's a sin?" He'd joke, but the edge in his voice made her chest tighten. One evening, as they spoke over a crackling video call, his tone shifted entirely. No more jokes, no more lightness. "You're my wife," he said, his words clipped, his eyes searching hers through the screen. "This is my right. Why are you making this so difficult?" The words landed like stones. She stared at the phone, her throat dry, her heart racing. How could she explain something he seemed so determined not to hear? One night, as she helped her mother set the dinner table, her father called her over. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, a cup of chai in his hand, his glasses perched low on his nose. "Beta," he said, his voice warm but serious. "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay with you and him?" She froze, her heart racing. Had he sensed something? Had her silence given her away? But she looked into his eyes, kind, steady, the eyes that had guided her through every storm, and nodded. Her father smiled, a small, knowing smile. She nodded, her throat tight, and returned to the kitchen. "Marriage is a journey, Beta. It's not just about love. It's about respect, about protecting each other's honor. If he's a good man, he'll learn. And if you're a good wife, you'll teach him." She nodded, her throat tight, and returned to the kitchen. As she arranged plates, her mother hummed a familiar nasheed, and her sister peeked in, teasing her about stealing an extra samosa. The house felt warm, alive, full of the love she'd always known. And in that moment, she knew she'd made the right choice. Not just for her husband, but for herself, her family, her dignity. Because that's what she'd learned through those 4 months of marriage, through the pressure and the pain, through the silence and the strength. Love isn't proven through demands or rights. It's proven through patience, through protection, through the quiet, steady work of honoring someone not just in public, but in the private corners of their heart. Even when you're married, you're still someone's daughter. You're still the keeper of your own dignity, your own values. And those are not things to be negotiated. They're things to be cherished, protected, and carried forward into the life you build together. She wasn't broken anymore. She was whole, and she was ready, not just to be a wife, but to be a woman who knew her worth, her boundaries, and the sacredness of her own heart. "I am your wife," she began, her voice soft but unyielding, like a river carving through stone. "And I do love you. I chose you, before Allah and our families. But I am also my father's daughter, my mother's pride, my sister's example. I carry their trust, their honor, their love in everything I do. Until I leave this house with their blessings, with the joy of a wedding, and the clarity of a rukhsati, I cannot betray the values they raised me with. What's halal isn't just what's permitted. It's what's honorable. It's what protects us both, our families, our future. If you truly love me, you won't ask me to compromise my dignity. You'll wait. You'll protect my honor as if it's your own. You'll be patient, not just with my body, but with my heart, my values, my soul. She stopped, her breath shallow, her heart pounding. The silence on the other end stretched so long, she thought the call had dropped. No arguments, no quick retorts, just silence, heavy and full. Then his voice came, quieter than she'd ever heard it. I, I didn't think about it like that. You're right. I forgot what this marriage really means. I forgot it's not just about us, but about our families. Our Dean. I'm sorry, Habibti. I'll wait. I promise. She exhaled, tears prickling her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. From the weight lifting, just a little. From the hope that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand. The days that followed weren't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still conversations that tested her patience. But something had shifted. His text became gentler, his tone softer. He started asking about her day, her dreams, her fears, instead of pushing for what he wanted. One evening, he sent her a photo of a sunset from his balcony with a caption, "Thinking of you, counting down to our wedding, inshallah." She smiled, her heart warming, and saved the photo. She began to see glimpses of the man she'd chosen, the one who'd stood nervously at their nikah, promising to protect her before Allah. The one who'd once told her, in a shy whisper, that he wanted their marriage to be a path to Jannah. Those glimpses gave her hope, not just for their future, but for the kind of love they could build. One rooted in patience, respect, and faith. Yes, they were married. Yes, Islam permitted their intimacy, made it halal, a sacred gift within the bounds of their nikah. But what about dignity? What about the modesty she'd carried her whole life, woven into her very being? What about the shame that would shadow her father's face if she slipped away in the night, carrying a secret that could unravel her family's honor? She closed her eyes and imagined it. The worst of it. Sneaking back into her parents' home at dawn, her footsteps too loud in the quiet hallway. Sitting at the dinner table, her mother's eyes flickering with unspoken questions. Her father's gaze heavy with a hurt he couldn't name. What if she got pregnant before the wedding, before the community knew of their nikah? Would anyone believe they were married? Or would the whispers begin, sharp, relentless, slicing through her father's reputation, her family's standing? It wasn't just about culture. It wasn't just about shame. It was about self-respect, about boundaries, about the loyalty she owed not just to her husband, but to the parents who'd raised her, the values they'd instilled, the trust they'd placed in her. She tried to explain. Over texts, over calls, in moments when her voice trembled, but her resolve held firm. "It's not that I don't want to," she'd say, choosing her words like fragile glass. "It's that I can't. Not yet. Not like this. I need to honor my family, my home, myself." But he didn't hear her. Not really. He'd dismiss her fears with a wave of his hand, a laugh, a sigh. But it was a big deal. To her, it was everything. Every time he pushed, it felt like a small betrayal. Not of their marriage, but of the understanding she'd hoped would come with it. She began to dread their conversations, her phone buzzing like a warning. She'd lie awake at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to her ceiling from childhood, wondering, is this what love is supposed to feel like? A battle between what's permissible and what's right. One evening, after another call, another request, another guilt trip that left her feeling small, something inside her shifted. She sat on her bed, the house quiet except for the distant clink of dishes in the kitchen. Her sister was asleep across the hall, her parents watching a late-night news segment downstairs. The weight of her husband's words, "You're my wife. You owe me this," pressed against her chest, but this time it didn't break her. It ignited her. She picked up her phone, her fingers steady, and typed a message. But she didn't send it. Instead, she called him, needing him to hear her voice, to feel the strength she'd found in the quiet of her room.